Is one of Moose's favorite people, Nancy Barile, professor at Emmanuel College,
Emmanuel College, yes.
former English teacher at Revere High School, where I'm a little jealous of Moose, and I'll tell you why right now. Also, she wrote a book that we're going to talk about. You have a book that's coming out.
Yes.
That we're going to talk about. Apparently, you were a crazy punk rocker back in the day.
Yes, all true.
But I'm jealous because Moose suggested you as a guest, and he was like, I had this amazing teacher in high school who had a big impact on me and all that stuff. And I'm like, why couldn't I have a teacher like that? I had nobody who made any type of impact on me in high school. I wanted to get in and out, and he was excited about your class, and an English class of all, too. It wasn't even like a special subject or anything.
That warms my heart so much to hear. Thanks, Moose.
Of course.
You were a great student, so it was easy.
But one of the big reasons that he loved your class is because it was an English class, but you somehow incorporated the show The Walking Dead
That is correct.
into English.
Right.
Like not Shakespeare,
No.
not I don't know, Hamlet, The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. And that started because I had Moose's best friend in my sophomore English class. And he was obsessed with The Walking Dead, so much so that he used to wear the leather vest with the wings on the back of it. And he'd come in all the time and be like, Barile, do you watch The Walking Dead? And I'd say, no, Jordan, I'm not into blood and guts and gore. That's not my thing. And, Jordan was a bit of a character, he wasn't, what I would say, like super academically inclined. He would do the work in class. And there's usually, when you're a teacher, there's usually one kid that if you can get that kid on your side, the rest of the class will follow. Mm-hmm. And Jordan was that kid in this class. And so I was really trying to engage him, and I could get him to do stuff at home. I mean, at school.
Yeah.
But if he had to read like a book at home, he'd be like, this is garbage, bro. This. And so by Thanksgiving, his grade had started to tank. And so I pulled him aside and I said, Jordan, what do I need to do to get you to do your work? And he said, I'll make a deal with you, Barile. If you watch The Walking Dead, I will do my work. And so, some people would say, don't make deals with your students, but I thought it was really cool that he was comfortable enough in our relationship to offer this challenge. And so I said, okay. And so at Thanksgiving, I started watching the first episode. It took me 5 tries to get through that first episode with the little zombie girl and it was crazy. But by the end of winter break, I had watched all 6 seasons that were available. And Jordan used to say, Barile, it has all that stuff that you like in it, symbolism and good character development and allegory and paradox. And when I was watching it, I was like, you know what? It does. And then every single kid in the class watched it. And on Monday mornings, we would have discussions about it. And we would go deep, like you would wish they would go deep on literature.
Yeah.
And so Jordan said, we should have a class on this. And I said, you know what? We should. And I went to my director, who was a huge, huge fan of the show, Christina Porter. And she said if I was willing to make the curriculum over the summer, that I could teach the class. And so Jordan was a consultant. My 15-year-old nephew was a consultant. And I made this class. And it was it was everything I wanted it to be. And I was scared that kids wouldn't take it. But the first time it ran, 81 kids signed up for it. And then I usually had 1 or 2 classes of it at least a year.
Yeah.
And it enabled me to teach kids things like psychology and sociology and international relations and ethics and business.
Yeah, it was much more than just like English.
Yeah.
Yeah, much more.
And a lot of writing. And, because I wanted them, I was afraid that kids were just being prepped to be able to write the way you're tested on a test,
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be able to do college level writing, feminist criticism, psychological analysis, sociological analysis, historical analysis. We learned about toxic relationships and the art of negotiation and things
Holy
like
crap.
that. It was fun. It was really fun. Yeah, it was really cool. And most importantly, we got to Zoom with some of the stars.
Really?
We did. We did. Were you in on the first Zoom, or was that
The one with Norman Reedus?
with Shane?
No, I wish.
Yeah,
With John
okay.
Berthal.
Oh.
You already know I would have passed out if that happened. Yeah.
Wait, you guys.
Yeah. So this was so COVID had hit. We were shut down, and then we came back and we were hybrid. So I had kids on the screen and kids in the class. I honestly don't know how teachers did it because it was really hard.
Yeah.
But there was a vice principal at the high school who had a sister who lived in California, and her kids were on the same Little League team as his kids. And he was able to get him to do it. And this is when he was like Punisher. He's A-listed star, you know? So for him to do this was unbelievable. He did it one morning at like 9:30 with a hybrid. You know, kids were on there, you know, they were in. And he was great. He had just come off. He was in Baltimore, and he was doing research for a police show that he was going to do. I forget which one it was. It was kind of like The Wire, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously he was tired, but he answered every question. And you know, he was unbelievable and really kind to the kids. And they were just absolutely thrilled. And, of course, that put my status up in the school, like, you know, as being the teacher who got John Bernthal to talk to the kids. But Norman Reedus was my great white whale because he's every kid's favorite character.
Daryl.
Yeah. Have you watched the show?
I watched it probably about 5 or 6 seasons. Might have been like right when I was like super into it, and then I started fading away. But Shane was my guy.
He was your guy?
Well, he was my guy because from the beginning, the way you got to put yourself in that world, right?
Right.
In that world, I looked at it as Rick was. His mentality and his psychology was like old world thinking.
Yes.
And it's like, no, Rick, it's a whole new world out there. You got to think differently. You got to act differently. And I feel like Shane had that mentality. Whereas some people would have looked at it and been like, Shane's the bad guy. Rick's the good guy. No. Shane is a realist with how the world is now.
Exactly.
And Rick needs to catch up. And see, now I'm going to get into my psychology about the show. When Rick caught up with it.
Right.
Was when he had to kill Sophia.
Right.
That's when everybody who was acting tough, all of a sudden, like, they realized they weren't as tough as they thought when they broke the zombies out of the barn, and Sophia came. That was an incredible scene. Yeah. So Sophia comes shuffling out, and all of a sudden, all these tough guys were like, and Rick stepped up and popped her, and that's kind of like when his character started making the switch of, okay, this is how we got to live now.
And it was great because John Bernthal gave us some good inside baseball about how he and Rick wanted to do the scene where Rick kills Shane.
Yep.
And he wanted it to not have bullets in the gun, and Carl discovers that. And then they realize that, you know, Shane was giving himself over, that Rick had to now raise his kid, you know, his own kid, and you know, take ownership of everything. And so it was really cool. It was great. And but Norman is the one.
Yeah. Well, I could see the kids liking him.
And he's got the greatest you know, character development, changing from, you know, an overt racist and becoming really valuable to the group.
He was just like a soldier. I looked at him as like if you look at like chess pieces.
Exactly.
He was kind of like, all right, we're just going to position him here. And he was like, just tell me where to be and what to do. You know?
I tried to get him for so long, the entire, like 6-7 years that I taught the class. And man, I would get close because he's a big punk rock fan.
Yeah.
And one of his favorite bands is a band called Minor Threat. And I know the singer and the guy who runs the record company. And I was like, this is going to get him, but like it didn't. And so like, I just kept trying and trying. And 7 days before I retired, my husband was in a band, and the record company guy there, Joe Nelson, knew their management and hooked it up. And 7 days before I retired, we Zoomed with Norman Reedus. And I brought Jordan back to, you know, to talk to him. And, you know, because Jordan started the class.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool thing.
Now, so what's Jordan doing now? Is he like...
Jordan details boats. Am I right? He's like, he owns his own business. Am I correct?
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you, every Christmas, Easter, everything, always sends me a text, asks me how I'm doing. You know, my husband passed away, he reached out. Barile, if you need anything, I'm here for you 100%. His whole family, I became very, very close with his mother and his grandmother.
Yeah.
And They were great. They would come to parent teacher night and bring me subs from New Deal. Are you familiar with New Deal?
Yeah.
So you know how awesome that is. And
He's from Everett.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I'm
right down the street.
Yeah, I knew that. And so, it was great to have these, these parents be so kind to me. I remember his father, Jordan's father, came in my room and he was like, "Those are the speakers that you're using." And the next day came in with speakers for me. That's how kind they were and how nice they were. And we're still very good friends. And so, yeah.
I wish I was in your class.
Yeah,
I want to talk about The Walking Dead now. Well, can I tell you? I told you about my Walking Dead, the way I thought the show should have ended, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell Barile.
Yeah,
okay,
tell
so
me, yeah.
Because I feel like it was one of those shows where in the beginning, when they first put it on, they kind of knew where the ending was.
Right.
And then I think because of the popularity of the show, they almost fell victim to the network going, let's do another season. So then they were kind of like, okay, what are we going to do now?
Right.
And they started adding stuff and extending it, not really knowing where the finish was going to be. Yeah. I don't even know how the show ended, to be honest with you, because now I know.
Watching after like Negan, when Negan came.
Yeah. Now there's like a million spin-offs and stuff like that. So this was what I thought would have been the perfect ending, because you got to think, it's this zombie apocalypse that they still really don't know how it started, unlike The Last of Us, where it's like, they're like, oh, it's this virus from plants or whatever.
Right.
So, and in the comic books, I know that Carl kind of took over as an adult and kind of took over and stuff. So, picture this. They have this big, crazy, a big zombie standoff somewhere. So, Rick at one point is fighting off zombies in a room. We'll make it a house. Everyone's in different rooms getting attacked. I don't know. Maybe they were set up by like a rival group or whatever. Rick is in one of the rooms fighting off a bunch of zombies, and it's one of those moments where, there was a lot of times where you're like, oh my God, they're not going to get out of this, but somehow they get out of it. He gets out of it, but he looks down at his arm and he sees a scratch, and he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So he just sits back on the ground and kind of lets himself. He's about to kill himself, but then for some reason he doesn't. He's just like, I'm just going to maybe. No, here's what happened. Okay. So he falls down and he sees a gun across the room. I'm going to reach for the gun and kill myself because I don't want to turn to a zombie. He starts reaching. Before he gets to the gun, it's his point of view now, the screen. It starts slowly fading. It goes black.
Right.
Remember how The Sopranos ended when it went when it went black, and it was black for about 10, 15 seconds before the credits rolled, and people were like, what happened? Yeah. So, okay, screen goes black. 10 seconds, 15, maybe 20 seconds go. So people think maybe that's how the show's going to end, because it's towards the end of, it's 9:58.
Right.
All of a sudden, you start seeing the eyes, again, person point of view. So it's like it's almost like from his point of view of his eyes opening, but instead of everything being in color, now it's in black and white, and you hear. So it's indicated that Rick's a zombie now.
Yeah.
So now again, you're getting everything his point of view. He gets up, he's shuffling through the hallway, looking around, seeing that whatever Maggie's fighting a zombie, Michonne's fighting a zombie, whatever. Shuffles into a room, maybe like the kitchen, and it's a bunch of zombies. You can't see who they're fighting, but you could see that they're fighting somebody, and the person's kind of like shooting, killing zombies. Finally, the zombies kind of clear, and it's Carl.
Oh.
So now it's Rick as a zombie shuffling towards his son. Carl just looks, makes a face.
Yeah. And you hear
pulls up the gun. You hear the shot. Black.
Yeah, that would have
credits roll.
Would have been a better ending than what they had.
Yeah, it would, because at the end of the day, it's like Rick was the show.
Yeah.
So everything's still gonna continue, but at least we get that type of closure with it.
Yeah.
I've told anybody who was into that show, I'm like, listen to my ending of the show. It would have been amazing.
Out there.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think Rick got taken off in a helicopter somewhere.
I know that he died, but
I know.
I don't want to give any spoilers to people that are still watching, but I didn't follow that up myself.
Maggie and Negan are like best friends, or they're hanging out like in New York. I'm like, how? This dude
killed your Glenn
in front of you. In front of you.
No.
And somehow you're like, I'm not gonna freaking wreck this dude any chance I could get.
That's what happens with franchises sometimes. They just
I agree.
Well, because I think
so many different directions.
Again, it's like I think that this is me speaking like I'm a Hollywood expert. You come up with an idea for a show. You get it's like a movie. You have the end. You know how it's gonna end. Okay. For some reason in my head, 5 to 6 seasons is the perfect amount of time.
I agree. Yes.
And then if they're throwing money at you and saying, "Hey, let's extend it," no. Give me the money to come up with something else.
Yeah.
Because if I extend this, people are going to get sick of it.
And that's what happens.
We want them. It's like when an athlete and they're like, "Oh, he had another year left in him," versus
he ended on a high.
Ending on a high going, he should have stayed for another year, versus that guy should have retired like last year.
Mm-hmm.
This year he kind of sucked. You want people saying like, "Oh my God, we want more of that show." And then, hey, you know what? Well, guess what? Barile and Moose are doing another show, and then people are going to watch it because
people will watch.
You excited them with that last show.
Exactly.
You know,
we were lucky because the way it worked, it was a semester-long course, and we usually got 4 seasons in, and those were the best seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a lot of kids that took the class never watched the show. So, can you imagine being in high school? I'm like running down to see the next episode of we'd watch in class, and then we would, totally extrapolate everything that we could from it. And it was,
you used to get a little heated in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we would like the exchanges with 2 people.
What we're like arguing about?
Like just like different cons. Like, so like we would watch an episode or whatever, and there would obviously be some sort of like work you have to do, like some sort of assignment or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we would devote literally an entire half hour to 45 minutes of just like discussion. She would just like throw out a question or throw out a thing and be like, "What would you do? And what about this?" And then it would just be like, "Well, so and so did that because they grew up in like an abusive household. So of course, when someone brings them like security and safeness, and then everyone's like, well, that's wrong. It goes against their morals." And she would just sit there like,
mm-hmm. Give me an example.
Mm-hmm.
Give me an example.
Like I'm trying to think what I remember that drove Jordan crazy was remember Andrea in the show.
Yeah.
Remember she went with the governor and everyone's like she abandoned Michonne.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys.
Yeah.
If you lived in that world and this guy showed you like a whole town where everyone's practically living normal, and he's showing you like love and comfort and security. You gotta weigh out the options here. Like, we all wanted Michonne to like be okay, and like because they were a team, you know what I mean? Not a team, but they were like really good friends. Like she like saved her, but I remember some people did not like that.
Yeah. And for what I remember, the governor wasn't like a dick. He was like one of the guys who created like a good world, and that you looked at him like a nice
beginning.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
A really good.
Yeah,
but
well, like as opposed to Negan, who like from the beginning is like. Yeah.
But she opened up the class. I don't know if you did this every year, but she opened up the class with like the CDC just issued I forgot what word you used. I don't want to say quarantine because that's crazy, but like there's something really bad is going on. You don't have like power, nothing. What do you do? What are you grabbing? Where are you going? Like, that's day one.
Have to fill a backpack of everything that they're going to bring, but it had to be what they could carry.
Yeah,
that was the very first assignment. They put in the backpack and why. And then the second assignment was, what 3 people would you bring with you and why?
Oh, my
and so
God.
those were great, launch pads to see, and especially with city kids, because to see what they were going to bring. But not a lot of people said like my cell phone charger, people said good things, flashlights, medicine,
right.
Weatherwear.
I learned about a water filter from you.
Yes.
Because someone was like, I forgot what it was, but she was like, well, how are you going to drink the water if it's dirty? You need a water filter. I was like, that's so true. I was like, how are you going to drink the river water? What if it's dirty?
Right.
What if it's contaminated? You don't know.
Yeah.
And I remember from that, I was like, water filter.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because
awesome.
We talked about how you would live if you had to live differently.
Yeah.
And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, my kids are ready for this. They know what they're doing. They know it, you
Yeah.
know, and it was great. But it was a lot to think about. And we argued a lot over collectivism and individualism. Like, if you were there, would you want to be on your own or with one other person maybe? Or would you want to be in a group? Or did the group bring you down? What is the true way to survive in an apocalypse?
Yeah.
And so it was, we had a lot of good conversations.
And then I dressed up as a zombie that year for Halloween for extra credit.
They were great. They did, what do they call that?
Haunted hallway.
Haunted hallways.
Yeah.
And then the kids came as zombies. You probably scared the little ones.
She was like, whoever goes and dresses up as a zombie, you get extra credit on this assignment. So I was like,
yeah, it's like, I'm in.
So with a class like this, how do you grade? Because are there really any wrong answers with?
Yeah, no, there is. Because
she grades. Don't worry. She grades.
As long as it was a lot of writing assignments. And as long as they could back up their claims with evidence.
Yeah.
And they did that well, and they used proper grammar, punctuation, spelling, etc., then they were going to nail it. And kids got really passionate. I knew after the first assignment that I gave, and it was like 2-3 pages, which is a lot for high school. And kids were turning in 10 pages, and they were giving it to me early. As opposed to before, way before the deadline. I was like, oh, I'm onto something good here. These kids are really enthusiastic about writing and talking about this show and expressing their opinions. And so I wanted to teach them a lot of really cool things, and it makes me happy that you do remember these things.
I'm trying to think if that happened, what type of society? Because you have to form some type of society. You just have to.
And that's what we did when we did international relations. When we looked at that, like we looked at, did you want just one leader, and did might make was the strongest, because you tend to lead with the physically strongest person, but they're not always the best. Like, look at Merle. Merle was an Army veteran and very skilled at trapping and things like that, but you didn't necessarily want him to lead your group. So that brought up a lot of good conversation. Who gets to lead?
Have you read the book Sapiens?
No.
So I just started reading it, but it's basically almost like about the history of Homo sapiens. Very interesting book.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm literally in the beginning, but it talks about how groups and society and stuff, they're only good up until for a certain amount of people. It's like when too many people get involved, that's when things start collapsing.
And I tend to agree with you there.
So and it's funny because when you think about it, you're like, oh, we'll just create a giant world, and the more people, the better. And in theory, you're looking at it like that makes sense, but it really doesn't.
Right.
Because the more people, there's always, no matter what the situation is, there's just always people who are looking to take advantage for themselves.
Exactly.
And I always say, listen, if you literally lined up a bunch of people, right, and you said, hey, we got a bunch of tents over there. You're going to walk into one tent and you're going to get a free car. You're going to walk into another tent and you're going to be able to pick your job. You're going to walk into another tent and get a free house, and walk into another tent and be able to pick where you live, whatever, right?
Right.
There's still going to be somebody who's going to say, how about can I get 2 cars?
Right.
Or can I trade a house for, this and this? And no matter what, there's always people who ruin it, I guess.
Exactly.
That's just how it is. People aren't equal across the board.
Exactly. And I like a system of checks and balances, where like our own, we have 3 branches of government where people can check each other. I'm an 8th generation grandchild to Ben Franklin. So
no way, really?
Yeah, that's important to me, that we watch ourselves and that we don't go unbalanced. And
you need that.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Watching that show, I was always like, who would I be?
Yeah.
Who do I relate?
Yeah, which character?
Yeah.
Do you want to know the one thing I took away from this is actually going to be really funny. You might laugh. Guess what grade I got at the end of all this? I don't know if you recall this conversation, but I do. It was very eye-opening in my academic years after. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I did well in school.
Yeah.
That was the only class I ever took of hers. I got a C plus.
Oh my God.
And I remember being devastated because my friend got like an A. And I was like, he only got it because he made the class with her. But I remember I went up to you and I was like, what the heck? And we had this long talk and she literally told me, she goes, from day one, you said to me, you know, I want to write and I want to do this and I want to be in this AP class and I want to go here and I want to go to this college. She was like, do you think I was just going to yes you to death and like, just like shoo you along? No. She was like, some of your work sucked and I had to tell you what to fix. She goes, you don't know proper punctuation properly. You don't know how to do this. You don't know how to do that. She's like, take what you learned from here. This was fun. She goes, but I hopefully installed some tools into you that you're going to take with you.
Yeah.
And I went, she's kind of right. I was like, my ego was hurt, but I was like, she's kind of right. Because I was like, how did I get a C plus in this class? I have like A's and B's and everything else. But genuinely though, you are absolutely right. Because I think as a teacher in any field, whether you're like mentoring people or students or whatever, you know, if someone comes in like I was like ready to go. I was like, yeah, Walking Dead, this is my jam. And then writing, I'm going to show her I'm a good student, blah, blah. They come in hot. Yeah. And Barile's the type of teacher, kind of like she said with Jordan, like you like to, I think, not find the underdog, but find the person that needs that little push of hope. Like you can do anything you want. She had like a culture club. She would take kids to plays. We went to go see a play once, like exposed kids. She took students to New York City. Like,
oh, that was a trip.
That was a trip.
Do we tell that story?
I think you should tell that story, honestly. But no, she was just that teacher where like if you wanted to get pushed into the next level, she'll take you there. But she's going to break you down and make you better. So,
that was my goal.
And it was.
And I think, you know, I was hard on you because I saw your potential and I know you know that.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah.
So what happened in New York?
So
I didn't go.
This class, that class that I had that year, that sophomore English class with Jordan, we were leveled back then where, you know, we had pre-AP honors and then what they called college prep. And that was like a college prep class. And these were kids that were, you know, that some did well, but a lot of them didn't do well in school for a variety of reasons. You know, it could be language or moving around a lot or just not having the right motivation and stuff. But they worked so hard that year. It was unbelievable. And I just wanted to do something for them because they were always on point. Like, and I never had a class that was so on point like that. So I said, I'm going to take these kids to New York. And I have a pretty big social media following and a lot of friends that like to help out schools. And so I crowdsourced all the money because my kids, it would be cost prohibitive for them to go. And I raised all the money. I even got $40 spending money for each kid to go to New York. And so before we left, you know, I was nervous.
That's like one M&M at the M&M store. Like they got to take them a plush.
Hardly any time to go to any souvenir stores till we got back to the train station and stuff. But you know, I wanted to do cool things. We went to the we had a private tour of the Museum of Modern Art. We did the Rockefeller Center. We did the library. We did the Empire State Building. And so that brings me to the story. So before we left, you know, I was worried because, you know, things can happen, right? Yeah. Terrorism, anything. And so I had a group text and I said to the kids, you know, this is our plan. If any, you know, the train could derail, there could be a bomb. Like, you know, I don't want to scare you, but like these things could happen. We'll meet on the steps of the post office, which was right next to Amtrak. And here's how you contact people, whatever. So now we get off the train in New York. We're there and the kids are all excited and everything. And we get to the Empire State Building. And you have to go through like a TSA thing, you know, metal detectors and stuff. And I hope Jordan doesn't get mad I tell this story. So I bring with me my girlfriend, Erin, who is kind of opposite of me. I was raised by a Marine. So my dad was a World War II Marine combat veteran. And so like everything had to be, and that's how I am, you know. And I told these kids I want instant obedience. If I say dive, every kid dives, you know, like that's how I want to run this trip. And so, but Erin was more, you know, she's a little nicer than I am.
Yeah.
So I went through first and she was bringing up the rear. And after I went through and some other kids went through, I heard the New York City cop running thing saying, "Is that a knife in your bag?" And they open Jordan's bag, and he has a machete in there that's like this big with a fire starter on the end of it. And I'm like, what? And he had told Erin he had a knife in his bag, but she assumed it was like a pen knife. Now, had he told me, that thing would have been on the bottom of a trash can at Walgreens.
Right.
But he told her, and she didn't really, she didn't think that it was going to be anything bad. So the cop was like, this is an arrestable offense. And Jordan was a little older as a sophomore. So he, I'm like, is this kid going to end up in a New York City jail right now? So I look at Erin and I give her the sign to like cry, so we start crying. We're from Boston and we're on a field trip and we've only been off the train 15 minutes, please, please. And they took pity on us, and the cop just confiscated, he was like, what were you going to do with this? Because my God, and so they confiscated it. And then I wanted to kill Jordan, because I was so mad. I was like, don't even look at me. Don't even talk to me. But I realized I had to get over it, or I was going to ruin the whole trip for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, but, there's a lot that comes along with that, because I have to call the school and tell them, because we have a zero tolerance policy for weapons, and I have to call his parents and tell them. And, it was kind of like, oh God, this is awful. But we rallied. And in the end, Jordan, he said, when I was going through all those scenarios that could happen, he wanted to be, I kept saying to him, you're not Daryl Dixon. This is not a zombie apocalypse. And so, but that's what he wanted to be, the savior. He was like, if the train derails, I want to be able to break windows and cut people out of seatbelts. And I want to, he wanted to be the big savior, but that's just not how you should do it. And so, he was lucky. The school sort of understood, and they didn't, they did, of course, discipline him, but not hard. He wasn't kicked out, which was great, and I was really happy with. And then I made a deal with that class when they took the state test, the MCAS test. I said, if you guys get the highest growth percentile, which is like from 8th grade to compared to other schools and stuff, if you get the highest growth percentile in the school, I'll take you back to New York, thinking, this is a solid bet, They crushed it. Jordan, who had a terrible history taking test, was 2 points away from advanced. He was like a 95% growth percentile. I used to have his score, his sheet hanging on my wall just to remind me. And the other kids, they had a 77% improvement from the last time they had taken the test. So they crushed it, so we had to go back.
Yeah.
We had to go back. But this time I was like, Jordan, So he
was like, what are you talking about? You already have the crying contingency. We're good.
Exactly.
Do like a third base coach.
No, literally, you gotta go. And
we had to.
Geezer could activate that quick. I think.
She was good too. She was good, but I was like, we have to get out of this. This is going to be a disaster if we don't. And I'm from Philadelphia, so I'm pretty street smart, and kind of hoped it would work. And
she took me in the class to go see a play, and I had done plays in this theater a lot during that time. So when we went, I remember I was really embarrassed to tell people I know this place like the back of my hand. So we sit down, and the show's starting, the MC comes out, and they're talking they're saying the thing. And it was me and a couple students and you. It was Jordan's mom. She was there too. And then someone said something summer acting program, whatever, blah, blah. And bro looks down. She's like, Moose, you should ask them about this. And we're just sitting there because I was wicked insecure about telling anyone I liked all this stuff. I was like, yeah, cool, yeah. And then we saw the play. It was phenomenal. It was West Side Story and everything. We leave, and I remember on the bus, she was like, what the hell are you doing? Why didn't you get any of the info? I was like, I already know this place. I know who that person was. And she used to love, not just me, but you loved, she liked bringing the truth out of people, for their authentic selves. And I used to hate that because I did not like talking about certain things like that. And so as you can tell with someone like Jordan, she just wants to bring the best out of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's something a lot of people who have had you as a teacher can all collectively say. Real quick, before we move on from the topic of teaching, do you mind telling him the story of who was that student you had? You always spoke about him. He was a track star from Bosnia.
Yeah.
I think we should get that story out too before we move on.
That was Mirzudin, and he was a kid that was also in my sophomore English class. Tall, 6'3", really long legs, but would come to class. Half the time sleep. Can I go to the nurse? Can I go to the bathroom? And every once in a while, I would ask a really difficult question about Macbeth or, something like that. And, nobody would answer. So I would say, okay, I'll give you 5 points on your next test, or you don't have to take the test or something like that. And he would lift his head up and give me the most profound answers. So I knew he was really smart.
Yeah.
But he just wasn't doing the work in class. So like many teachers, I had many side hustles, and one of them was being the site manager for the soccer team, where I, paid the referees, made sure no fights broke out and things like that. And Mirzudin was a soccer player, and I would see him run down the field, and where everybody else would be like this, he'd be like, shoo, shoo. He was fast. I was like, damn, this kid is so fast.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with him because around Thanksgiving, his grade was tanking too. And I was like, what's your deal? Because you're obviously really smart, but you're not doing anything in my class. And like, what's the story? And I knew he was from Bosnia, but I'm an ignorant American. I didn't know the extent. And he proceeds to tell me this entire story about being living in Bosnia, and when he was 6 years old, war broke out, and because he and his family were Muslims, they were targeted for genocide by Slobodan Milosevic's campaign of ethnic cleansing. And so his family had to flee their home. They were shot at by snipers. One day they're playing in the backyard, in the field or whatever, and his sister gets hit by a bomb. And her leg is filled with shrapnel, and it was, there are no doctors, no hospitals, so the family gives her whiskey, and they wrap it in blankets, and she pulls out all her hair because the pain was so intense.
Older sister?
Younger sister. She was maybe 2 when that happened.
Oh, my God.
And so, the family, they were starving. They would get pallets of food that the UN would drop into fields, and then they would bury it so other people wouldn't steal it. And he's telling me this whole story, and I'm like, oh my God, and the reason they got to come over here was because after the war, the European doctors wanted to amputate her leg. And they said, there's only one doctor that can save you. And I think he was at Boston City Hospital.
Yeah.
So the Red Cross said, well, we'll pay to get you refugee status, get you over here. So they came over here. Mirzudin was put in 7th grade. ELL classes because he only knew 2 words of English, okay and bye, and he wasn't even sure what those meant. And, his family got jobs and they were trying to survive. And so he's telling me all this, and I'm just like, oh, my God. And he says, I have an older brother. He dropped out of the vocational school to get a job at a gas station and bring in money for the family. And the only reason he's like, I failed, he only went to school for a total of 1 year between 1st and 7th grade because of the war. And so he was doing okay in English, history, but in things where things had to be scaffolded, where you had to learn stuff and build on it, he was really kind of struggling. So he said, the only reason I even went to I failed every year. The only reason I went to summer school is because I love soccer and I want to play soccer. And as soon as soccer season's over, I'm probably going to drop out because my parents don't think I'm taking school seriously and they just want me to, get a job. And I said, nah, dude, you're not doing that. I said, you're going to stay in school. And furthermore, you're going to run track. Because I saw you run, and I think you're fast. And so the track coach at the time was this guy, Steve Pavey, who was, he was in my department, but I was kind of scared of him. I didn't really talk to him that much. So I went down and I'm like, Coach Pavey, I got this really, this student that I think, is be really good for track. And he's like, you know anything about track, Barile? And I said, no, but I know when somebody can run fast. So I'm sure you do. Bring him down. So I bring the kid down to the gym after school. I'm teaching a credit recovery class after school for kids that had failed English. And he goes down there, and like 2 hours later, he comes back. He's like, Barile, I smoked everybody. He's like, I smoked seniors, juniors. Wow. You know, I threw the shot put, almost broke the school record. I did the high jump, almost broke the school record. I'm like, wow. 45 minutes after that, Pavey comes down. Barile, where did you find this kid? I never had a kid this fast in 32 years of coaching. You know, he's like, please tell me he's eligible to run track. I said, I don't know, you know, because he's failing my class. We call up the kid's grades. He has all F's. So he's not eligible to run track.
Okay.
So the next morning, the kid comes in all pumped up, and I said, sit down. I'm going to talk to you. You got to listen to me like you've never listened to any adult in your life before, because if you do, your whole life could change. And I said, you need to get your grades up. You need to get to school every day. You need to stop fighting, because he was getting in a lot of fights. And I said, you know, you could go to college on a scholarship. You know, this would be amazing. And I've had these conversations with kids over the years. Some listen, some don't. This kid listened. By the time he was a senior, he was a state and New England champion. He was ranked 6th in the nation. He had, you know, all these scholarship offers and everything. We ended up sending him to a year of prep school at Phillips Andover, which I only knew because my nieces went there. I didn't realize it was like the most prestigious prep school in the country, but he applied, and it was like $57,000 a year. He got a full scholarship.
Unbelievable.
And at one point they wanted, you know, to kick him out because he was doing well in everything but math. And you know, we talked him into keeping him. And then he went on to do incredible things. He was an NCAA champion 5 times, I think. He was dean's listed. He was he went on to be NCAA Inspirational Award. He just did so well. And I stayed friends with him. He ended up getting a job in Washington, D.C. And, you know, it was funny because my husband and I, every time he would, you know, come around, we'd take him out to dinner. I never had children, you know, so he was kind of like our kid. Yeah. And at one point he said to me, you know, Barile, he's like 26, 27 at this time. And he's like, you know, you really helped me a lot, but there's one thing that you didn't do. And I was like, Jesus Christ, what didn't I do? And he's like, because, you know, I helped him he got citizenship and everything, because we needed that for him to get the scholarships and stuff. He said, you never found me my wife. And so he's joking around, but you can't joke around with me like things like that, you know, because I take everything really
You're a matchmaker too?
Exactly, yeah. So I remembered there was this Bosnian girl that went to the high school, and she graduated a couple years before him, and she was beautiful and smart. And so I sent his pictures to her pictures to him, and they ended up going on a date, and they fell in love. But what I didn't know, again, ignorant American, what I didn't know was that she was a Bosnian Serb, and he's a Bosnian Muslim. So she was the enemy, technically, during the war. Mm-hmm. And so his parents sort of had a problem with that. But she was just lovely. And they're married. They have, they're together. They have 2 kids. I'm godparent for both their children. I'm going down there and staying with them for Christmas this year. What? And they come up and visit all the time. And so, yeah, that's the short story of that. Yeah. But, yeah, he was really a special kid with a lot of potential that just needed some direction, you know, and he did really well for himself, and I'm really proud of them, and they're a great little family, and they, you know, they look after me too, you know. Yeah,
it's crazy because there's probably a bunch, I mean, those obviously, you know, you affected them in a positive way, but there's probably a ton that you don't even know about, right, that they're kind of like, oh man, you know, if they look back at the trajectory of their life, they're like, it was when I had that conversation with Barile or when I took that class that changed.
Kids that have reached out to me and said that and talked to me about conversations that I don't even remember having, you know. And I think that is kind of the good thing about the high school where I taught. I wasn't the only teacher by far doing these things. There were a lot of teachers at Revere High that were just like me. So it wasn't really anything, you know, there are, you know, geezers like that. And, you know, there's a lot of teachers that really care about kids and go that extra mile for kids.
Care enough, I think, to also, like, one comment is they will tell you when you're screwing up.
Right.
But, like, not like a demeaning way. Like, they'll just check you.
You need that. That's what people who don't have the mentor or that person in their life, they're like, I just want somebody to be nice to me all the time and tell me when I'm doing awesome. You're not going to get anywhere that way.
Yeah.
You need that person who's going to be like, I kind of look at it as like if you're teaching a kid to ride a bike, right? You don't hold the bike the whole day in time. They're never going to learn how to ride it. You let them go. And if you see them about to fall, you let me just pick it up a little bit. All right, keep going, And every now and then you let them, not like crash and burn, but like, if they lose their balance, they got to learn, okay, I got to fix myself or the consequences falling off the bike.
Do you think there's been a shift in education and how teachers teach? Because like I just hear stories from like younger kids or things like that, and it just sounds a little different.
Yeah, it's a lot different. It's one of the reasons I retired. Things got to be just changed after COVID. And I recognized that it was time for me to head out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, at least you acknowledge that. Some people, they don't.
And so I did.
Yeah.
My way of teaching, reading whole books and, that kind of thing was just, they were going in a different direction. And I wanted to to go out while, like you say, like when my season is still
Yeah. One season early. Yeah. She should have stayed extra.
7 days with Norman Reedus was the epic mic.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
What? Okay, so clearly, so you didn't have any kids of your own.
No.
Okay,
children of my own.
so you got this. Let's go back to when you were younger. What made you get into teaching, and who was the person that kind of instilled that in you?
Okay, so I always wanted to be a teacher from the time I went to school. I played school with the entire neighborhood. I taught my brother how to read and write before he went to kindergarten. That was my thing. But my dad, the Marine, he said, teaching, you don't make good money. Kids are crazy. It's dangerous. You should be a lawyer. And, my dad wasn't somebody that you argued with. And so I said I went to school to be a paralegal. Was what I was going to do. I had good teachers from 1st to 8th grade. In high school, not so much. And I always say there's two kinds of teachers out there: those that were inspired by incredibly good teachers and then they wanted to do it, or those that had bad teachers and they, I used to sit in the back of the room and be like, if I was teaching this is what I would do,
Yeah.
And so I think, I was like, if this is the way teaching is, I want to be the anti-teacher then. I want to do something completely different. So I went to school. I was a paralegal and a word processor at a law firm and legal secretary and doing things like that. And then I met my husband through punk rock, and I moved to Boston. And once I was, what is that, like 500 miles away? I don't even know how many miles away Boston is from Philly, but I realized I can, I'm not under the, my husband went back to school to get his mechanical engineering degree. So when he went back, I said, well, I'm going to go. And I went to Emmanuel where I teach now. I'm going to go and get my teaching license. And so that's what I did. And I was 36 when I became a teacher. So I was older. Then, but I think the experience that I had in the corporate world, in the real world, the law firm world, was something that helped me as a teacher to sort of realize what kids are going to face when they get out there.
Yeah.
So
what were you doing in the punk rock scene?
So, it's funny. People always like, how did you get into punk rock? And I was like, well, I went to Catholic school and my dad was a Marine.
Yeah.
As soon as I got out of my school for paralegal was 2 years long. I got an associate's degree. And then I moved to Center City, Philadelphia, where I was on my own. And this is, of course, time before cell phones or anything like that. So my parents had no idea what I was doing. And I always loved live music.
Yeah.
That was my thing, from going to see Bowie and Rod Stewart and Bruce Springsteen and bands like that when I was 15. I just somehow gravitated to this punk rock scene, and I just really, really liked it. And I began managing a band and promoting shows, because back then there was no such thing as an all ages show. If you wanted to see a band, you had to see them at a theater or a stadium or a nightclub.
Yeah.
And I was 19. So I wanted to see bands. So my little brother and I and the band that I managed and some friends, we would rent Elk Centers and Knights of Columbus halls, and we would call bands all over the world, literally all over the world, to do shows. And that's how I bought my husband's record, and it said, SSD Control wants to play your city, and there was a phone number, and I called it and talked to Al. And, he couldn't do the show that I wanted, but we met in Staten Island the next weekend. And that was like in July. And by December, I had moved here.
So he was, what was he, the lead singer?
He was a guitarist.
He was a guitarist.
Yeah. Big guy. And he was a big proponent of the straight edge movement, which I don't know if you know what that is.
No, I know. It's like no drug, no drinking, all that stuff. Yeah.
He grew up in Lynn.
Yeah.
And he felt he didn't really have the choice to not drink when he was in high school. And he said, drinking for him was not good because he would get in fights. He was a big guy.
Yeah.
And, it just was not for him. And so he really, cleaved to this straight edge thing because he was like, you can have a choice and still be cool.
Yeah.
And
so there were punk rock bands that are just straight edge like that?
Him and certain members of the band were, but yeah, that was the mess. He wrote all the songs. He didn't sing them, but he wrote all the songs, and that was the message. Like if you listen to the first record, 9 out of 10 songs are about straight edge and stuff. And it's kind of cool because I get, we still get messages to this day on their social media, this saved my life, this changed me for the better, and that makes me really proud. That's a pretty cool legacy to leave.
Yeah.
In this world, I think. And
Does he still play?
Huh?
Does he still play?
He played until he got he had back surgeries, and then he got colon cancer, and then he got neuropathy in his hands. And he couldn't play anymore. And he always wanted, the band broke up in 1985, but it's crazy, they're still popular.
Really?
The Trust Records, the guy who hooked me up with Norman Reedus, they re-released his records like 2-3 years ago, and they sold unbelievably.
Really?
It's really amazing. And so we had always hoped that maybe they might do like a reunion show together, but he passed away in April. So we didn't get to do that. So, but it's when he died, like the L.A. Times and Pitchfork and all these places did stories on him, and
wow.
It was really, I didn't really know the impact that he had on the world until that happened. And my Instagram feed and my Facebook feed were just filled with tributes, and it was really heartwarming. And so we're going to do an Al Barile Day in April. I think it's going to be at Roadrunner, and we're going to have a bunch of bands come and play, which I can't say, but they're big. And we're going to raise money for Dana-Farber. Because as you know, under the current administration, we've lost a lot of funding for research, cancer research, Alzheimer's, heart disease, everything. And that there were things that, his oncologist had told me that were in the breakthrough stage that just got stopped. And so I thought, well, we could make an enormous impact if we, do this, raise some money and, sell some merchandise to raise more money. And that's what we're hoping to do in April. So
that's awesome.
Maybe I'll come back on and we can hype it up.
Hell
yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved to Boston.
Yeah.
You get your degree, you start teaching, and did anything happen where you're like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, or did you immediately go like, oh my God,
so
where's this been all my life?
My next book that I'm writing that's called Adventures of a Punk Rock Teacher.
Mm-hmm.
My first class were freshmen, and I had all these Cambodian kids, their families were refugees, and they came here, and they were not exactly welcomed by the community. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of property damage. The homes were set on fire. And so they formed gangs for protection to make money and things like that. And I had all these kids in my class. Now, I went to Catholic school, and I had zero cultural competency, none at all, which now they teach in schools. But back then they did not teach cultural competency at all. And so I didn't know how to, how am I going to, you cannot teach kids if you can't build relationships with them.
Right.
I didn't look like the kids. I was older. I was like, how am I going to reach these kids? And, they were doing, there were some fights in the cafeteria between football players and the Cambodian kids, and I knew nothing. My gang knowledge came from West Side Story, and anything I saw.
Snapping.
Yeah. How come you guys aren't singing before you fight?
My background in punk rock and living in Philadelphia made me fearless and made me tough, and I said, maybe I can use some of the things that I learned in punk rock in the class, in the classroom to reach these kids. And that's what I did. And these kids taught me as much as I taught them.
Yeah.
They were really great. My first year, I lost a kid to gun violence. He was shot and killed off of Thornton Street. And that was like devastating. And that was a time where I was like, oh my God, can I do this, Yeah. But I thought, I have to do this, I have to do this. And so I did. And that's what my next book is about, how I applied the principles and facets of punk rock to, teaching this class. Like, we were fiercely loyal as punks to each other, and we had clothing and things that sort of identified us to each other, and so do gangs. And so, we were disenfranchised and felt marginalized. And I certainly could not begin to compare my experience as a white kid growing up.
But it's something that you can kind of be like, okay, you can kind of relate in a way.
The systemic racism that these kids were experiencing every day. There's just no way. But there were little things that I could take that, could help me be a better teacher and reach them better. And one of my students was a young woman named Lidra, and she was wildly talented, artist, writer, everything. And she ended up dropping out her senior year because she just couldn't deal with the social aspects of school. She could do the academics, but like the cafeteria and everything, it's just, and we kept in touch, and she went on to become a teacher. And to this day, she is one of my closest friends. She's, she moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is funny because it's not far from where I lived.
Yeah.
And she's down there as a teacher now. So she sort of did the reverse trip that I did.
That's
She
awesome.
met a guy from New Jersey, and they got married and had kids, and they were just up here visiting. And so that was like, she would have graduated 99, I think. So, but we still keep in touch. And
so what was the what's the first book, the one that you already released? What's that one?
So my first book is called I'm Not Holding Your Coat. And that is just about, growing up as a Catholic school girl, finding punk rock, being empowered by it and doing things that, as a woman who grew up in the 70s, during like kind of like the disco era, although don't get me wrong, I love my disco. I didn't feel like I had as much agency as I wanted, but punk rock really gave me that, because we started doing shows charging $5 and, making money and doing things. And I'm meeting all these people from different backgrounds and different races and ethnic groups. And it really was mind expanding for me. And so, I just loved it, and I still love it, and the friends that I made through punk rock are still my friends today, to this day. It's just unbelievable. When my husband died, they were there for me 100%. I don't want to start crying, but I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Nobody made sure I was never alone, made sure I had help with my move to Boston. They're just always looking out for me, and and my students too. Half the people that come to visit me are former students. So it's great. Yeah.
It's like what Johnny said. I know we're not relating your experience to like what people in gangs relate to, but Johnny did say in that episode, because he didn't rat out
Johnny
person. Yeah, Johnny Bart, because he didn't rat out someone, his affiliation took care of his family the entire time he was away.
Right.
So it's like, I get what it makes sense. When you're part of a community, obviously that's like a negative connotation to it. But when you're part of a community that uplifts you during good and bad times, it's meaningful. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and they were just really, really good to me. And the gang kids are still really, really good to me and still keep in touch with me. And, I always say that, I could call them up and say, I need $10,000 in a ride to Florida. And they'd say, what time do you want me to pick you up? Like, they would be there for me instantly. There's a couple of those kids that I still talk to this day.
That was such a specific situation. I feel like you've asked that for somebody.
She knows what you mean.
Yeah.
they're really, really good to me. They used to, before we had, Uber.
Yeah.
And this is, after they were out of school. Before we had Uber and Lyft, and I never got a driver's license, and I hated taking the T. I'd call them. I'd go out in town and stuff with my friends, and I'd call them to come and pick me up. And, half the time I'd be, not know where I was. And I'd be like, just beep the horn and I'll find you.
Did Al drive you to work every morning?
Al drove me to work in the morning.
Every morning?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, sometimes I walked, because I didn't live that far away. But he, was working at GE. And so
No, you live near me, though.
When I lived in Broadsound, but I lived at 370 Ocean Ave near Banana Boat.
I live there too.
Yeah.
I forgot we used to live in the same apartment building.
We sort of did the same
Yes, you remembered me in like a freaking stroller.
I remember during prom when your sister got her prom pictures taken. I remember you as a little kid,
That's so funny, yeah.
It was wild.
You used to walk from
370? It's easy. Yeah, that's a short walk, just on Beach Street and over the thing. You didn't walk?
No.
Like, at what point did you guys get tight with each other? Because I just can't. I'm like trying to rifle through my head. I'm like, what's the most that you knew about any teacher that you had? And I couldn't tell you a damn thing. I couldn't tell you a first name for most of the teachers. I think a handful of times I might have saw a teacher like not in school, and I was like, "This is so weird. What are you doing in a grocery store?"
Else it's like a dog on their.
Yeah. I never had that type of connection where I cared or they cared about me. Frankly,
it was a special time. Not to sound corny, I think, because like she was definitely one of them. I had really other good experiences with a lot of the English teachers there, like. Miss Collum.
Yes.
She really put the key in the engine and started me. She was like, and then I had Miss Wilkins. Like a lot of my English teachers there, I think they just cared, but in I think they cared the way they're supposed to care. That obviously makes sure you're performing well academically, but as a human being, I think you guys really realize you're crafting adults that are gonna go step out into the world one day.
And I do think that was unique to Revere High.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of teachers that were like that. Mr. Fellows is like that. Mr. O'Brien is like that. They just care.
Yeah.
And I think that across the country I see that as well.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that that wasn't your experience.
Not even close.
Yeah, it wasn't mine either in high school. And that's one of the reasons I became a teacher. I had one teacher that I did like, and one.
Sometimes that's it. That's all you need.
And sometimes that's it.
But yeah, I think that's why I keep telling them, like, you should go take a free college course. Just go sit in like some like lecture hall and just.
Well, you're always
restart.
welcome to come to my classes at Emmanuel if you ever want to stop.
I will one day. I told
it's fun.
There's no Walking Dead class anymore, but you can still go.
Never mind. No, my daughter goes to BC, and I said, hey, once you get settled in, one of these days, I want to figure out a day to just like go sit in a class with you and see what it's like.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be fun. I would like to go sit in on a class. I still want to, go to school. Thinking, like, what can I? Recently became vegan, so I want to take like nutrition courses and stuff like that, and a lifelong learner, right? That's what we are.
I do a ton of online learning stuff. I'll sign up for all those like it's called Coursera.
Oh, you do? That's awesome.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
I love it.
wow.
Yeah, and you just like do it on your own time.
Taking that you would recommend?
Oh my God, my favorite one is the one that got me into it was literally my favorite one. This lady, her name is Lori. Oh, what's her name? Lori. I believe it's Yale. I bet you if I Google Yale Coursera course. It's basically like the science of happiness or something like that.
Yes.
Hold on.
I took there used to be a thing called One Day University that came around to Boston. It was a national model, and they would take 4 professors, the greatest professors as picked by the students, and they would lecture on one subject. And so their business model was older, wealthier retirees. But when I saw the ad in the paper, I called them and said, like, can I bring some students to this? And the guy was really cool. He was like, it was like $400 to go, but he let me bring like 20 kids for free every single time they came here. And and there was a professor there from Amherst College that did the science of happiness, and the kids loved it. And I learned a lot from that course. And it was funny when we were stuck in New York, that same trip with Jordan.
Yeah.
When we went to leave, there was a power failure in Connecticut, and we were stuck for 3 hours in Penn Station with 20 teenagers after the knife incident and everything, and I'm exhausted and filthy and just wanted to get home. And I remember, the guy who ran this, who was very wealthy, he was like, if you need a place to stay, you can bring those kids to,
oh, wow.
And it was great. But luckily the train got up and running. Go ahead. What's
the
course?
The Science of Well-Being. Highly recommended.
Okay, I'm
highly.
So on that. My space where I am right now,
yeah.
I need that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I know the lady's name is Lori something, but she is absolutely
all right.
Lori Santos. Fantastic. And then I do a lot of just health and fit. I just
We've been on the Joe Dispenza wave. Well, he was on it way before I was. You know who that guy is?
No.
It's all about, oh God, where do you even start with that? Consciousness, quantum physics.
God, I don't know.
It's a lot. But it's basically saying you control your reality. Not your reality controls you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, it gets into how, people, you tell yourself a story. When someone will say oh, I can't do that because I'm whatever.
Math.
Yeah. And then it's well, you say that enough and you're never going to work on being good at math because you create this. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. And then years down the road, you're just well, I'm someone who's bad at math. And that all started from one time where maybe something happened that was challenging in math.
Yeah.
And you were oh, this means I'm bad at math. It's no, it doesn't.
Teachers, we have to flip that negative thinking into positive thinking. And
Yeah, that's really enlightening too. That's what I keep myself educated on. Yeah. And history.
That's good. I listen to a lot of health podcasts myself now since I've want to be around a little bit longer, and for my godkids and my nieces and my nephews, and so that's why I went vegan, and I'm exercising now every day.
I know you're still teaching, I think, but I feel like there's another chapter coming.
Oh,
for you.
100%.
No, for you. No, I think
you're one of those I can tell you're one of those people that
I don't know. We'll see.
You've had a crazy life.
Yeah, I had a fun life. Yeah.
Definitely not boring, as they say.
Yeah. It was definitely a tough year, but I think you have, I don't know if it's a podcast or something, but I think there's something coming. Well, there's a new book coming.
I'm gonna have the new book. Yeah, I'm gonna have the new book, and then but I'm tired. I want to, I want to relax. And
she's living in a beautiful Fenway apartment now.
Yeah,
nice.
She's not a Revere girl anymore.
My husband talked me into this fancy apartment building because he wanted to be closer to Dana-Farber for his chemotherapy treatments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very frugal because I grew up with parents that grew up during Depression and war and stuff. And so I agreed to do it for a year. We signed the lease, and he died literally the next day.
Oh.
And so I'm on my own in this apartment, but I was a good saver, and so I should be okay. And we sold our house in Revere and stuff, but it's an amazing building because it's like a little community, and they have game nights, and they teach you how to make sushi nights and all this stuff. And I didn't go in the beginning, but I went up for game night because they were having pizza. Yeah. And I wanted pizza. And so I got up there, and the two women who ran it, they're like, "Do you know how to play rummy?" Well, of course I grew up on that stuff. So we started playing rummy. Then we started playing Articulate. Did I ever play that with your class, Articulate?
How does it go again?
Where you get a word and you have to get your partner to get
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I mean, we just had the best time. And it's cool because it's almost like all doctors and physical therapists and nursing and scientists in there and stuff. And I'm like one of the oldest people in the building.
Yeah.
But they're really nice to me. And they want to hang out. I'm going to a concert with a physical therapist who can't be he must be 30, where I was like, hey, you want to go see Turnstile at Suffolk Downs? We're going to go.
You're like, that's my neighborhood.
Yeah. And we're going to go, to see another band play at the Middle East in December. And so it's kind of cool. They're nice to me, and they, we have our own game nights now, unsanctioned by the building that we do.
It's probably cool when your students come and you're then
She's running an illegal. She's running an illegal rummy operation. I gotta get. Busted. Yeah.
But it's fun, and these people are so interesting. Their lives and their trajectories are really fascinating to me as well. And so it's, I feel like it's home, and I feel comforted and safe there. And it's like my husband picked it out for me.
Yeah, I was going to say that was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, everything like that happens for a reason, 100%.
Yeah.
And I still feel his presence there,
And that's the most important thing. It's comforting because it doesn't feel empty, And
I'm lucky. My best friend Kathy is a therapist, and so she helps me a lot, and it's a little easier every day. Days are pretty easy. Nights are hard.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I even answered earlier. I think, well, our circumstance was different. I think what you're saying is like when, you have young kids and you have kids my age too. Like, I think it's all different. Like, she was talking about Jordan earlier. His experience with her was different than mine.
Yeah.
Even though I knew her, like, I knew her through him also. And like I said earlier, I came in really hot and confident, and you know what I mean? And she was like, that's how we, I think, bonded those student and teacher, because she acknowledged it, but she was like, all right, if you're going to talk the talk, then walk the walk. Some students, though, they really needed that mentor. They needed someone to say, hey, like the Bosnian kid she was talking about, hey, like you can change your life. Just trust me and invest in yourself. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that education isn't a part of it. Yes, I think learning and adapting your brain, that's as important, but to sit there and say, hey, this is an investment in yourself and in your life, the action of showing up for yourself and doing the work and getting a reward, that's the thing I think that really kicks it into gear. Would you say so?
Yeah,
or
I teach people now that want to be teachers.
Right.
And I say your job is to create opportunities for your kids, so that they can see their own potential and that they can soar. That's your job, and you have to build trust before that you can do that. And you have to, have a classroom that feels like a community for kids to do that. Because if a kid walks in your class and they don't feel safe, or they don't feel, their amygdala gets hijacked, and they're not going to learn anything. And so that's, I work a lot on that. But I think that's the strong point of the teachers at Revere High. They recognize that. You got to build those relationships, and then you can.
What year did you start teaching in?
96 or 7.
96 or 7. Okay, so you saw the transition of like no social media and all that stuff to social media.
Right.
What was the biggest challenge as far as that?
I mean, phones.
put your phone away in Barile's class.
Yeah, phones were a huge challenge because kids get distracted. I get distracted by my own phone,
Yeah.
And so I was lucky because I taught electives mostly. And so I would tell kids, and I bought charging docks, from Amazon. And I told kids, if you want to take this class, you got to dock your phone, but you can charge it.
Yeah.
A lot of kids, they like that, because their phone is out of gas by second period, So I said, you have to charge it. If you don't want to do that, then go to guidance and get in another class. And so I was lucky, but competing with a phone is really difficult, to and social media can be good and bad things. I like social media because it enables me to keep in touch with kids, and they inform my practice for years. Yo, Barile, when you did this in class, it was great, but you need to do more of this or less of this, or and that was getting that feedback from my students was really important to me. And a lot of them went on to, a lot of my kids went on to do some really incredible things.
Remember we did that thing for the Beatles?
Yes, I still have that on my phone.
I swear to God, I didn't know what, even though you explained it 5 times, I didn't know what we were doing until after it came out.
Yeah.
Tell them about it.
So I had blogged for Scholastic. Do you remember Scholastic, the fair,
Oh, yeah.
book and stuff? I had blogged for them, and they were really good to me. And they were doing a thing about the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to get classrooms to have somebody call in and ask questions about,
It was a documentary that also came out with the book.
It was going to be on, PBS or whatever. And so
was it like a multi-DVD set or something like that?
It was something big. It was like a book and a documentary about the Beatles, and they had this whole panel with like Whoopi Goldberg and someone else, some other rock star, talking about the Beatles, and they were asking questions, right?
They were like, now we're going to go to Revere, where Mustafa has a question.
No idea what we were doing.
It's hilarious. It's still on my phone. And it's great. And, he's there and he asks, and the other kids, Jordan's sitting behind you. The other kids are all sitting, and he asked, a question, and then they answered it. And it was really fun, but it gave him an on-camera experience, We just wanted to get him an on-camera.
Yeah, she emailed me. She's like, come to my class after lunch right now. And then she was like, here's what you're going to say. And I was like, what are we doing? And she explained it. I was like, okay. And then until it came out, I was like, Whoopi Goldberg just saw my face. I was like, oh my gosh. But it was things like that. We did that. Remember, we also did a whole short film for the ACLU, and she ran a production. I have never seen that side of her. She was not messing around.
That's the child of a Marine.
Yeah, she literally was rehearsals, and she handed me the script. She's like, I swear to God, if you don't come in with all this, Moose out the door. I'll get someone else. I was like, okay.
You were great. You were wonderful. You were amazing. And we also did a little short, because, people put Revere down, and Revere is a great city. Mm-hmm. We've got the ocean and just so much beauty and intellect, and everything is there. And it sometimes doesn't get recognized that way. So I'd seen this commercial that Eminem did for Chrysler about Detroit. Mm-hmm. And so we imitated it. We emulated it. And at the end, I needed a person to come in as the Eminem character. And, I had people try out for it. I don't know if you tried out for it, but nobody was fitting it right. And Jordan and I, we were still a little on the out, because I was still mad at him for the knife incident. And then I was like, Jordan, if you do this, it'll be like the knife incident never happened. And he did it, and he crushed it.
He did.
He crushed it. That's still on YouTube, and I show it in my classes too at Emmanuel. It was a source of pride for us. It showed everything that the school does and the city does, and
She gave me the deep drama monologue.
Really?
I had to get really sad about something. I forgot what it was. Someone was trying to take my rights away about something, and I wasn't having it. That was my fault.
I still have that. Yeah, I used to I like doing those kind of things. Sing a song,
Yeah.
One time, after one of the elections, kids were really scared and sad. I was like, well,
oh my God, it was 2016 when Trump got to, I forgot.
Right. And so I was like, you know what? We'll sing a song. And so we sang, Matisyahu's One Day. Mm-hmm. If you know that song, the lyrics are really super uplifting. And it was weird because I gave the kids the lyrics and, told them where to find the song on YouTube or wherever. And came back the next week and they all knew it. It was amazing. I lined them up in the room and I started filming on the first take and they sang it. And I cannot watch it to this day without crying. Really? It is so, you just look at all the faces and everyone is so diverse. And so Andrea Loria is in that, she went on into career in radio.
She does midday at Mix 104 with Fast Freddy and Greg.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah, she was on. And they just sang from their hearts and it's absolutely beautiful, and it just, so whenever, things got tough, I was like, we'll sing a song.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah,
that is really, really cool. Damn, I wish I had a teacher like you. I think I was like that kid who I was just, you know what it was? I just didn't care. I want to get in. I want to get out. I wasn't dumb because I figured out. I would say to Moose, I'm like, I just figured out the pattern. Right. I'm like,
everybody's trajectory is different. Everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
And you who you are.
Right.
If you didn't have that experience, you might be different.
Right. But I think to defend the teachers, I think they were probably just like, you know what? He's kind of like doing his own thing and he's not failing.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to let this one coast to, through or whatever. I think because now it's so different where there's so many like cool documentaries on historical things and stuff like that. I used to hate those classes. Yeah. If things like that were out then, if things that are out now like that, like documentaries and things of that nature were out back then, I would be like this.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, because for me, it was literally telling the story of something like that was in a book, and you almost trying to just envision it happening. I really didn't care about it, so I was just like, all right, what are the facts? All right, United States got into a war because of this, whatever. I'll regurgitate that when they ask me the quiz, and I'll let it leak out of my brain, and then just pick up the new information for the next quiz.
I had a teacher, literally, it was Mrs. Hart. She's a history teacher. I had her literally stop the class, and she explained factually why we were at war in the Middle East. I remember this clear. She erased her entire chalkboard, drew a timeline, and started. Because I was like, I genuinely don't know what's going on. Explain it all.
All I do now is watch YouTube videos that explain stuff like that. I had a guy that used to work with me, Mark. He was a producer on the show, and what is he doing now? I forget what it was, but I was like, Mark, you need to quit and get yourself a teaching degree because you would be an amazing teacher. He would literally come in, and let's say if it was now, I'd say, okay, what's the latest with the Ukraine and Russia? Yeah. And he would break it down for me and start using analogies. He'd say, okay, so imagine you're walking down the street and this guy says, by the way, how dare you walk down the street? This is my block or what, something like that. And then I would be like, oh, okay, now it's starting to make sense.
And who's great at that is Pete Buttigieg. He is amazing at that. Somebody said he could explain the Middle East conflict in what's that restaurant where everybody gets in fights all the time?
The restaurant where everyone gets
not around here. It's is it a Cracker Barrel? What's it called?
Cheers?
No. He's like he could explain this at 4 a.m. in a restaurant. And I would get it. You don't remember that one where there was the girl caught the chair in the air?
No, I would love to know which one this is.
You got to Google that. Yeah,
the chair.
There always fights there. It might be Cracker Barrel. I can't remember what the name of it is. But there's this great one where there's like a big fight and this little waitress, somebody hurls a chair at her and she catches it by the leg.
That's hilarious.
You gotta say it.
Oh my goodness.
But that's what they say about him because he has a really good way of explaining. That's a gift. That guy should be.
It really is. I'm like, Mark, you need to get your teaching because you're getting me invested. Like he would literally come in and I would be like, tell me about something just because he would be excited telling me the story. I'd be excited listening to the story and I was learning at the same time.
Right. Imagine what he could do with a class of 25. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So, okay, now I'm going to ask you just some random.
Okay, go ahead.
Random stuff. So what topic could you give a 20-minute talk on with no preparation? Like right now, you're walking into another room, you have to give a talk.
I'm probably at education, being a high school teacher, or punk rock.
Yep.
Or those are probably my two early punk rock. Not current punk rock, but early punk rock. I could definitely talk on.
Did your dad? This is even a random question. Did your dad tell you any stories about the war?
Not as many as we wanted to, because I think it was a very traumatic time for him. He was in Okinawa, which was one of the most brutal battles. If you want to read a really good book, read The Mosquito Bowl. It's called The Mosquito Bowl, and it's about how somehow all these amazing football players were stationed in Okinawa at the same time, and they had a football game and then how all these they all fought in this war and who lived and who didn't. And I mean, I was openly sobbing when I read the book. But after I read it, my father had already passed, but I had so many questions for him, but I understood why he didn't talk about it that much. But he did. My dad used to mall walk. And he met, he was do two-a-days.
I love that.
He used to mall walk, and he met a guy down there who took his oral history and typed it all up, and I have that. And so,
that's
really cool.
amazing.
Just for the heck of it, I remember him calling me on the phone. Nance, this guy wants me to do an oral history, and I was like, let me check him out first, because you never know with old people.
Yeah.
Exploit them and stuff, But I checked him out, and he was an academic, and that's what he wanted to do, was to get these World War II veteran stories, down on paper so that they would live forever. And he did my dad, and it was really cool. And you went one time, right? To, I feel like I have a picture of you.
At the airport?
At the airport.
Yeah.
We used to go see, they had what the heck was the name of it now? It's escaping my Honor Flight. Honor Flight took World War II veterans and Vietnam veterans from this New England area down to Washington, D.C. for the memorials for free. And we would go to the airport along with other groups and cheer them. And they're not expecting it, So it's these, old men and women, and they're in wheelchairs, and they walk.
Make signs, yeah.
And we had signs like, thank you for your service, and we love our World War II vets. And I'd be bawling the whole time because they all reminded me of my dad.
Yeah.
And they would be crying. I remember one time a guy, in a wheelchair looked up and he said, who are these people for? And she was like, they're for you, Dad. They're for you.
Wow.
My God. And what a great experience for the kids to connect them
Yeah.
to World War II, something that happened long before they were born,
Right.
but now they have a real life experience with the people who fought that war. And it was really a meaning.
I did it one time, yeah.
I remember you did it.
Yeah.
What did he do after he got out of the war and
My
came?
dad was a plumber and a pipe fitter at B.F. Goodrich.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and he was, he was tough growing up.
Yeah.
We butted heads a lot. And, I couldn't wait. I was out of the house at 19. I had my first apartment because, he was so tough. But it was funny, as I got older, I realized how much I was like him,
Yeah.
and the resilience and the toughness that he installed in me made me a better teacher and a better person,
Yeah.
but he was, oh God, we fought like animals growing up, It wasn't until I was probably in my 40s. And then, as he got older, he would be called upon because he lived to be 92. And so there weren't a lot of World War II veterans. So he was asked to speak or to write things. So he'd call me up, Nance, I got to write a speech, And so we would write them together. He'd do op-eds for the newspaper and stuff. Wow. And we would work on them together. And it gave us, a really cool, we had a really good relationship by the time that he passed. And I'm lucky that I got to do that because a lot of people don't.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, what's a path that you almost took but didn't?
Yeah, I would always wonder if I went into, radio or even more promoting on a bigger level, promoting shows on a larger level. I always thought like I could have done that. That might have been fun.
You have the personality for it, 100%.
You never know what could happen, but I always wondered. I thought that would have been a fun career.
Yeah, you remind me of my wife where she's an attorney and she's good at what she does, but I always say to her, it's not even it's the qualities that you have as a human being that whatever, if you chose teaching, if you chose the medicine, if you would excel at whatever it is that you did because she has it in her just to learn the thing,
right? The passion project, right?
Yeah, but more just attributes that some people have. I don't want to say some people don't have, just some people really have it well, where it's basically at the end of the day, I call it just telling stories. Some people are really awesome at telling a story and engaging someone to teach them, or like she played softball in college, and one time I went with her, she goes, "Oh, this is when we first started dating. I have to go coach this team or whatever." It was like high school girls. And I went with her just to watch. And I thought I was like, to me, I was like, all right, we're going to do this for an hour and then we're going to go on a date or whatever, And I was watching her teaching these girls. And after she finished, I said, Nicole, you're like really good at this. I said, I can't even explain how she did it, but she had a way of, if a girl was having trouble with something regarding whether hitting or in the field, she would pull her aside and teach her by telling her a story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you know what I mean? It's such a weird.
My whole life is story.
Yeah, and I think people who have that quality could excel at so many things, because if you think about it, that's literally what teaching is. Like from back in the day, when humans were just moving around in tribes and stuff like that, you taught people.
Tradition, right?
You taught them about hunting, making food, surviving. You taught them by telling stories.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Storytelling was very valued in my family. Like if
Yeah.
if you came home and my dad said, I got a story, everybody would gather around the kitchen table to hear it.
Yeah.
It was really important. And to this day, my brother's the same way. My brother will only text me unless I text him and say, Dan, I have a good story. You
Yeah.
got to call me. He's like, all right, better be good,
Like even now, like if I'm talking to someone, I'll hear somebody ask someone a question and the person goes, oh, that reminds me. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. This is going to be good because they got a story to like teach a lesson. All right.
All right, what else?
Let's see here. Favorite quote.
My favorite quote is probably, and I don't even know who said it, if it came from a movie or whatever. It's wherever you go, there you are.
Yep.
Because I always, a lot of my students coming up were afraid to, go into different spaces thinking they didn't belong or whatever. And I'd be like, no, wherever you go, there you are.
Yep.
So go for it. And so I say that a lot. And it's funny, one of my former students just brought that up to me and said, I remember you saying this. I was like, yeah, that's a good one.
A skill that you wish you could like literally just wake up with and have tomorrow.
Probably weightlifting again. I used to do that in the 80s, was all about the gym life, Nautilus Plus in Revere back in the day.
Yeah.
And I lost that. That's one thing that went with teaching. And now I have arthritis in my elbow and osteoarthritis in my knee, and I can't lift the way I want to. But that's a skill I wish I had. I always wished I could sing. Because if I sang, I could have been in a band, but I had zero musical talent. So I realized that if I was going to be part of music in this punk rock scene, I was going to have to be in the infrastructure part of it, promoting, writing for fanzines, stuff like that. I would have loved to be able to open my mouth and just sing. Wouldn't want to hear it now.
If you could time travel to the past or the future, you can't affect. You can just witness something.
Okay.
It could be a historical event. It could be something personal to you. Either way, which way are you going and what do you want to see?
I would go back to 1982. That was a really pivotal year in my life. It was the year that I had the most fun. It was the year I experienced the most danger.
Okay.
And it was the year I met my husband.
Wow.
So that is definitely, and moved. I'm in December 28th or something like that of 1982. I moved to Boston.
Yeah.
So it was a really important year in my life, and I would love to go. Even though it was crazy and I experienced a lot of near-death situations, I'd still go back.
What happened?
Well, back then, punk rock wasn't really as accepted as it is now.
Yeah.
People just didn't. So whenever we did a show, you sort of took your life in your hands. And there's a place in Philadelphia called Kensington. And if you ever look it up, it probably has hit your YouTube before because it's very insular place. And there was a venue down there where where some people did some shows. And the locals were very territorial. And they did not want anyone coming in their area and colonizing it, or especially not punk rockers. And so, one of the first times I went there, a huge riot broke out. A DC band played, and a LA band played, and there was a huge riot. I got hit in the face, and black eyes and everything, and people got really hurt, like hospital level hurt.
Oh, wow.
And then we were stupid enough to go back a year later for a Dead Kennedy show. And I brought my little brother, and it was a hot July day. And we were sitting on the sidewalk out front because it was so hot inside. And, all the punks were gathered round. And my brother was in the middle of a sentence. He was younger than me, maybe had just gotten out of high school. And I saw a car pull up with 4 guys in it. And I thought they were going to do a drive-by shooting. Yeah. And I just grabbed my brother and I said, run. And we ran. And then I heard this huge explosion. They threw a homemade bomb at us in a glass jar with a stick of dynamite and ball bearings and BBs in it.
Oh, my God.
So the girl got her heel blown off, and people had ball bearings and BBs embedded into their arms and legs. And, it was crazy, you know. So that was I made a vow then that I would never go back to Kensington, and that is a promise I've kept to this day.
This was because they didn't want a punk rock show,
They didn't want us in their neighborhood. Yeah, they just did not want us. And I'm telling you, Google Kensington, and you'll know what I'm talking about. It was bad then, and it's worse now. They just wanted their, you know. I understand it on a level of a neighborhood type level. You know, you just didn't want anybody else, you know, coming into your area.
Yeah.
And so they ran us off pretty good. And a year after the first show that I did with my husband's band, I did with a group called Better Youth Organization. It was based on a model from LA. And we booked amazing bands from up and down the West Coast.
Yeah.
In Camden, New Jersey. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Camden, New Jersey, but at that time and today, it's probably considered one of the most dangerous areas in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But I was jaded by my Philadelphia existence at the time. Everywhere was dangerous, and I just figured we'd deal with it. But we ended up, you know, my husband said, you know, my husband's from Lynn, and he had nice equipment, and he's like, don't bring me to a war zone. And I was like, it'll be fine. And as we were driving there, I could tell it was, you know, it was not a good neighborhood. And I was like, he's probably going to kill me. We pulled up to the venue, and the singer from Minor Threat, which is a great Washington, D.C. band, came over to talk to my husband. I got out to see where to load the equipment in, and I saw a station wagon hurtling down the street with this wide-eyed, crazy look in the driver's eyes. And I was like, this guy's not stopping, you know? And he plowed into my husband's van. He ran over the singer of Minor Threat and then took off.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Then I went in the club, and I saw, you know, probably 12 of the scariest black biker gang people called the Ghetto Riders.
Mm-hmm.
They were a division of the Wheels of Soul.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend who was doing the show with me was sitting there. I was like, can you come here for a minute? I was like, what's up with those guys? And she's like, look, people were getting attacked and mugged on the way to the show. These guys, their clubhouse is next to us. They demanded entry. They put out on the street that this gig is a rider show, ghetto rider show tonight. And that saved us. They saved our lives that night, you know, because kids were, you know, and they said to me, they said, we can protect you as long as you don't go outside. You know, stay inside and you'll be fine. But one time it just had gotten so hot that I went outside and somebody threw like a D battery at me and it hit me right in the ribs. I thought I got shot. And then I ran back inside and said, I should have listened to the call.
That would have been me. I got shot. It's a D battery.
Yeah. Oh, it hit me hard, you know.
My friend blew her Achilles one time on a basketball court, and she was convinced that somebody shot her.
Yeah.
I'm like, she said, "Who shot me? Who shot me?" And they were like, "There's 8 of us here."
Like, what are you doing?
We're in a high school.
Right, but all that, you know, all that experience sort of made me fearless, and it helped me when I did gang outreach.
Yeah,
and tried to help those kids. And
I was about to say, remember when she said I couldn't relate to the Cambodian gang members? Somebody threw a bomb at you. I think you could.
One of my former students, he's incarcerated, and he read my book, and they always used to ask me back in the day, like, Barile, why aren't you scared? You know?
Yeah, you weren't scared of nobody.
Well, after hearing these stories,
like even like the punks, you weren't. Oh my, she was never scared of anyone.
But you know that. So he read my book while he was in prison.
Yeah, and
he said, you know, after I read this book, I was like, now I know why.
Yeah, honestly, me too. Now I know why.
How's she not in here?
No, literally.
Yeah.
Okay. The name of the book is the one that's out.
The one that's out now, I have 2 books out now. One's called I'm Not Holding Your Coat.
Okay.
And that's available at bazillionpoints.com and on Amazon. And then I did a book, like an oral history of my husband's band, SSD Control, which is called How Much Art Can You Take? And it's a photo essay book told from by the members of the band, me, and people close to them.
Yeah.
It's a hardback. It's photos. It's really nice. And then my new book, the tentative title is Adventures of a Punk Rock Teacher.
I love it.
And so I don't know if the publisher will change the name or whatever. We'll keep it, but we'll see. And that should be out in 2026.
Do you have any questions for me?
No, this is great. I'm telling you, I was so nervous, but you're very good at your job. You get me talking, and so
I just love when people have cool stories, and you have cool stories.
We scratched the surface of the punk rock world. That's a whole other conversation, I think. Whole episode.
Fun, and I'd love to, maybe for Al Barile Day when that happens.
Yeah.
Come back on, and
please, yeah.
We could promote that or something. It would be cool.
Awesome.
I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
Nancy Barile, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.